Here in the desert southwest of central New Mexico, access to abundant salt deposits transformed the region into a major trade center, serving both the Pueblo and the plains. While Gran Quivira was the largest of these Salinas Mission pueblos, there was no running water source nearby for the nearly 3,000 residents to access. To make this position work, they devised 30 stone-lined catchment basins built into the slope, which caught runoff from sporadic rain. In addition, the limestone-floored valleys surrounding the Pueblo held groundwater which was tapped through digging wells. Unique canteens were utilized to transport this precious resource back home. Flattened, disc-shaped vessels were devised to carry up to 5 gallons of water by suspending it from a sling with strap around the forehead or chest to provide support for balancing the heavy canteen on one's back. These were decorated in human and religious figures, along with animals and asymmetrical layouts.
This is one of several Kivas at Gran Quivira. Kiva comes from the Hopi word meaning home in the ground, and they're semi-subterranean dwellings, which were probably used for habitation and then later for religious practices.
With the arrival of the Spanish, traditional religious practices seem to have been initially tolerated, given the close proximity of the Kiva to the original mission structure. However, excavation of Mound 7 uncovered several covert Kivas built within the room blocks, showing that by 1660, a change in Spanish attitude drove traditional believers underground to hide their ceremonies. The San Isidro Mission is the smaller and older of the two churches located at Gran Quivira. Constructed from local limestone between 1630 to 35, the church design closely resembles that of the mission at Abo. There is a walled cemetery east, however a notable absence of the usual attached convento.
Many people comment on how small the dwellings and doorways are here, but forget to remember that Pueblo people were about 5 feet tall during this time. However, if you look to the door here, it's much larger. This was actually used as the convento by the first priest of the mission. Instead of building his own, he converted about 8 Pueblo rooms into much larger spaces to his specifications.
In 1629, Father Francisco Letrado was sent to Gran Quivira and successfully negotiated with Pueblo leaders to use 8 rooms located on the southwest corner of Mound 7. To make these rooms more suitable for his needs, he modified them by enlarging some doors, sealing others, constructing an altar, and adding more windows for better lighting. Letrado spent the winter in Santa Fe and returned to Gran Quivira in the spring of 1630 with several wagon loads of supplies. Once again, he negotiated with the Pueblo leaders, this time securing a work crew to help expand the space. They built an additional 8 rooms, effectively doubling the size of the convento. During this period, Letrado also began to work on the San Isidro Church. He would not live to see it finished, as Letrado was transferred to Hawiku and Zuni, where he was killed in 1632. Letrado held concerns that Gran Quivira couldn't support a large mission due to the significant water shortage, leading it to become a Visita satellite mission of Abo. In 1659, work on a new, massive mission began, but was never finished. The nave left open to the sky, and Letrado's 1630 concerns sealed the fate of the village. This is the story of Gran Quivira. Archaeologists believe that the first Mogollon-style houses found here date to about 600 AD. The people built simple pit houses by digging a shallow hollow in the ground and covering it with a domed frame of branches and mud. A hearth near the center of the pit house kept the residents warm. Due to their compact nature, cooking and most other activities would take place outside. As time passed, the Mogollon improved pit house construction by using a framework of posts and timbers to support the roof. Many houses had a cutout door that led through a small vestibule to the main room. Later, ladder access through the roof was used for entering and exit. By the 10th century, substantial Mogollon villages flourished in the Salinas Basin, and by 1150, influences from the north became apparent. Spreading from the 4 corners, the ancestral Pueblo began interacting directly with the people here at Gran Quivira. Pottery made by the people here began to change from Mogollon brownware to intricately painted types used by ancestral Pueblo. A new type of housing called jacals began to appear, which were above-ground rooms of wooden posts with woven wicker walls, plastered in mud. By 1300, construction had evolved into large, multi-story masonry complexes, some with hundreds of small rooms surrounding plazas, using the local blue-gray limestone. Residents used these rooms for storage and sleeping, while daily activities were performed on rooftops and in the plazas. Influx of glaze-decorated pottery into the region reveals shifting social and economic ties between the Salinas district and broader Rio Grande region. In the 1300s, limited contact brought traded glazeware bowls from Rio Grande villages to the Salinas, with interactions increasing into the 1400s as networks expanded. By the early 1400s, the Galisteo Basin dominated regional glazeware production, with the Salinas still importing most of its wares. Abo later emerged as a key producer, sourcing lead from local ores, where Gran Quivira contributed smaller quantities as well. Lead isotope analysis indicates that Salinas potters likely produced their own glazed paints from various ore sources, rather than importing finished paints. Over time, a standardized high-lead, low-copper glaze formula spread across the eastern Pueblo world. Glaze paints are mineral pigments that vitrify at temperatures above 700 degrees Celsius. Despite producing distinctive red-slip bowls, Salinas potters maintain stylistic and technical connections with the wider region, underscoring the importance of these relationships. The fact that this innovative technology was adopted throughout much of the ancestral Pueblo world within about one generation is quite significant. It suggests that the potters and their communities were involved in far-reaching, unifying social networks. More changes to the Pueblo occurred during the 16th century, including construction of new rectangular room blocks on top of older structures, and the transition of pottery style to Tabira black on white, including the unique canteens mentioned earlier. During its heyday between 1000 to 1600 AD, Gran Quivira and the nearby villages of Abo and Coray formed the Salinas district, which became a major trade center, engaging in commerce with people from Mexico, the plains, and even the Pacific coast. The Salinas district exported salt, pottery, corn, cotton, and piñon nuts. In return, they received bison meat and hides from the plains, freshwater shells and flint from the panhandle of Texas, macaw feathers from southern Mexico, and alabaster shells from the Gulf of Mexico and Pacific coast. The Salinas villages, grouped into two broad areas. Those in the northwest of the basin are known as the Manzanos cluster and include villages like Tanabo, Abo, and Coray. To the south, east of Chupadera Mesa, is the Humanos cluster. This includes the late prehistoric villages of Gran Quivira, Pueblo Pardo, Pueblo Colorado, and Pueblo Blanco. The Humanos cluster is fairly homogeneous in terms of architecture and material culture. Remarkably, these communities continued to make and use black and white pottery after much of the Pueblo world had adopted red and yellow slipped ceramics in the 12 to 1300s. Humanos Pueblo residents spoke Tampiro, a mountain variant of the Piro language. In 1598, Don Juan de Oñate entered New Mexico to establish the first permanent Spanish colony. After three major battles between the Spanish and Pueblo between 1599 and 1601, the Spanish established control of the region. In the early 1600s, another Spanish expedition entered the region, this time from the south, and named the Gran Quivira community Pueblo de los Humanos, and referred to the people who lived there as Rayados, after the stripes painted on their faces. Many pictographs in this region depict faces with stripes over the nose, a practice characteristic of people from the plains. The Spanish did not inhabit the village until 1627, when a Franciscan priest arrived to introduce the Catholic faith. Soon after, Father Francisco Letrado became the first resident priest at Gran Quivira. Using Pueblo labor, Letrado quickly began constructing the first permanent church. However, within 2 years he was transferred to Zuni. The arrival of the Spaniards led to a significant change in the Salinas region during the 1620s. Newly imposed systems, such as the encomienda, obligated Pueblo people to pay tribute in cotton cloth, corn, antelope hides, and other resources, as well as provide labor for both civil and church officials. To cope with these demands, villagers adjusted their diets and strategies. Pueblo Blanco intensified hunting, Gran Quivira focused on corn and hide production, and Coray possibly relied on trade with neighboring villages due to high labor obligation. The Spanish friars worked to convert Pueblo people and suppress indigenous beliefs, evident in the archaeological record through burned kivas and changes in pottery design. Women at Manzano's pueblos simplified their ceramic motifs, obscuring images of birds and other symbols, while those at Gran Quivira expanded iconographic expression, likely to preserve cultural knowledge. The next resident priest did not arrive until 1659. In the interim, Gran Quivira became a visita, or preaching station serviced by Abo, located 25 miles to the north. Frequently, the Abo priest and choir would travel 7 hours to Gran Quivira to lead mass and tend to the religious needs of converted people at the village. Initial contact here with the Spanish priest did not dramatically alter daily lives of the people of Gran Quivira. However, this all changed in the early 1660s. The new Spanish priest, intent on now forcing the Puebloans to worship only one god, suppressed traditional religious rituals by destroying ceremonial objects and burning the kivas. In response, clandestine new kivas were quickly built within the room blocks in order to continue religious practice. By the mid-1660s, Gran Quivira had lost 2/3 of its population. Many villagers died of smallpox and other disease brought by the Spanish. Many more starved during a severe 4-year drought that destroyed the crops. Any stored food quickly vanished, and the Apache began to raid the villages as well in search of food. In the midst of the drought, the new priest organized Pueblo labor and began to construct a larger missionary complex, similar in plan to other missions of the period. He successfully completed the convento, however could not finish the church before the village was ultimately deserted. In the grip of drought and famine, surviving only on food brought into the Salinas Basin from other settlements, mass deaths from starvation occurred in 1668. In September 1670, Apaches raided Gran Quivira and destroyed the mission in Pueblo, leaving 11 dead and taking 30 captives. Finally, by 1672, the Puebloan churches were completely abandoned and left to the elements, the remaining population leaving for Abo, other Puro-speaking communities south along the Rio Grande, or migrating towards Isleta Pueblo. Mound 7 was excavated in the 1960s and is the biggest Pueblo mound at Gran Quivira. While digging into the mound, archaeologists found an older circular pueblo underneath the rectangular one. The circular pueblo dates back to around 1300 and was built around a central kiva. People lived there for maybe a century. After the earlier pueblo was abandoned around 1400, the first rectangular rooms of Mound 7 were constructed on top of the older one, between 1400 and 1515. After being deserted for 30 years, the rooms of Mound 7 started to grow again, and by the time the Spanish arrived, had expanded to more than 200 rooms. Mound 7 was completely excavated from 1965 to 67, which uncovered all 226 rooms and a large number of artifacts, including intact pots, water jugs, animal figures, and stone tools. House A, also known as Mound 10, marks the southwestern boundary of the Gran Quivira ruins, with San Buenaventura Mission and Convento to the west, and other house groups, kivas, and the Chapel of San Isidro to the north. Excavations focused on the western half of House A, exposing 37 rooms and older wall remains. House A was moderate in size and height, overshadowed by Mound 7 to the north. Evidence suggests that most mounds had at least 2 construction phases, rarely reaching more than 2 stories, as the Spanish often consolidated smaller pueblos for administration or defense. The structure is rectangular, oriented east-west with a central plaza and a regular room arrangement. The 37 excavated rooms fall into 2 main groups: the northern section, which had 19 moderate-sized rooms in 2 rows, connected by doorways within each row but not between them, and the southern group, which had 18 smaller varied rooms with connections in both directions. Similar layouts appear at Pueblo Pardo, 1.5 miles south, where 14 excavated rooms were tightly clustered without clear pattern, most containing doorways. The masonry was poorly constructed, with weak mortar and haphazard limestone block placement. Most walls could not support a second story and used locally sourced limestone, varying in size and broken along bedding planes. Walls were 2 stones wide, lacked a core, and the mortar was sandy, containing charcoal and ash, offering little binding strength. Similar construction issues are found at other pueblos of the same era, such as Pueblo Pardo, Pecos, Paco, Abo, and Coray, where material and method only slightly improved based on local stone quality. Floors consisted mainly of compact refuse, and their levels were determined by accumulated debris rather than intentional design. The floors were formed from sandy refuse and occupational debris, with no imported materials, averaging 1 to 2 inches thick. Most rooms had a single, indistinct surface, but rooms 1 and 38 showed 2 levels. Eastside rooms near the plaza had clearer floors, while those deeper inside blended imperceptibly into surrounding refuse. Out of 37 rooms, 6 lacked doorways or windows, despite sufficient wall height, where others had between 1 to 5 openings, a total of 26 doorways and 4 windows. Doorways were narrow, high above the floor, and uniform in height, with no pattern relating sill to door height. Wooden lintels, likely juniper poles, topped 5 intact doorways. These features are typical of late Pueblo sites, having high, narrow doors and similar lintel construction. 7 doorways had their lower thirds blocked with masonry, creating window-like openings similar in size and position to the site's 4 windows, all in interior walls. Windows often had small pole lintels, matching those found above the doorways. House A had 5 wall vents for air circulation and 2 bins. The vents were simple stone-framed rectangular openings, mostly at floor level, with no plug or covering. Bins varied in structure, subfloor and above, and were sometimes divided by partitions. Regional sites like Pueblo Pardo and Paco had bins ranging from single units in room corners to multiple compartments along the walls, occasionally featuring handholds or different vent types. While some sites had numerous bins like Anchagi and Jemez, others had few to none. Vents and bins are associated with storage, likely for corn, though their numbers and features varied by site, suggesting their use wasn't uniformly specialized for maize storage. Roof remains were found in every excavated room, with evidence suggesting House A was just 1 story high. The roof consisted of closely spaced pinon and juniper poles, topped with smaller latillas, 2 layers of vegetal material, and a fine covering of dark, sandy topsoil. Most rooms contained plastered walls, sometimes up to 8 thin layers, occasionally whitewashed, although smoke deposits often obscured the appearance. Plaster was applied by hand or with coarse cloth. 10 fire pits were found, mainly at the outer edges of the pueblo, all rectangular and slightly raised, built from trimmed slabs. 3 fire pits featured upright stones, supporting stone griddle comals, a practice noted at several other sites. Initial excavations recorded a low wall in room 1 as a probable bench, but further investigation revealed many of these benches were actually remnants of earlier structures incorporated into House A. The builders likely reused fallen rocks and built around existing walls. Some remnants became benches, shelves, or served no clear purpose. The older building's extent was not fully determined to avoid damage to House A, but indications suggest it lay beneath much of the west side and extended northward. Only half of the plaza was excavated, revealing packed refuse with irregular surfaces, ash deposit, and depressions with no evidence of hearths, posts, or shelters. Its small size implies it functioned mainly as a protected entrance rather than central plaza. Similar features were absent at other ruins, and if House A's construction occurred late, the enclosed area may have served defensive purposes. Alternatively, the court and numerous doorways could reflect convento influences during the San Isidro occupancy. The Pueblo housing units at Gran Quivira were scattered, with only a small fraction excavated compared to the historic site. This contrasts with the more compact, centrally planned villages at Pecos and Paco, where plazas were better defined. Gran Quivira's layout was shaped by its ridge-side location, resulting in varied elevations and less organizational planning. House A featured detached kivas, single-story masonry, irregular room arrangement, high narrow doorways, and an absence of specialized ceremonial rooms seen elsewhere. This design was similar to other eastern frontier pueblos, but lacked unique interior differences. While some kivas were attached, most remained as separate structures. Gran Quivira's scattered architecture and lack of coordinated town planning imply less cohesion than neighboring pueblos. House A at Gran Quivira isn't directly associated with a kiva, which is not uncommon for small pueblo units here. Of the 17 large mounds, only 9 kivas are evident, often positioned alongside pueblos rather than attached. Kiva D lies northeast of House A, between Mound 7 and the San Isidro Church. Kiva D is a simple, subterranean circular structure, about 17 feet across and 6 to 7 feet deep. Its lower walls incorporated natural boulders and soil covered with plaster, topped by masonry similar to House A, using a limestone and topsoil mortar. The roof was supported by 4 upright poles set unevenly into the floor, but no roofing remains were found. A prominent feature is a large central ash pit filled with sandy ash and refuse. A smaller adjacent pit contained solid white ash and seemed partitioned. The large ash pit may have held sacred deposits. The ventilator shaft opened through the east wall, lined with masonry and a wall niche on the west, where no artifacts were recovered. Kiva F at Gran Quivira was unusually large, measuring 35 feet 7 inches in diameter and nearly 7 feet in excavation depth. Its most unusual feature is a wide bench, largely intact in the eastern third, with a peculiar unroofed ventilator shaft cut through it. Due to excavation challenges with large boulders, the floor was never fully cleared, and no features described. Charcoal and wood layers atop the bench suggest the kiva was roofed. Kiva F shows rare architectural traits with Kiva 12 at Pecos, both being among the largest kivas known from the region, and featuring benches which are uncommon for prehistoric Upper Rio Grande kivas. Like Kiva F, the kiva at Pecos had incomplete floor clearance and lacked definitive floor features, though evidence of a potential roof support was found. Collectively, these sites indicate the emergence of a new style of large kivas in the early historic times, characterized by broad size, benches, eastern ventilators, and often an absence of distinct floor features. In 1659, Gran Quivira regained its status as a permanent mission site during renewed missionary activity in New Mexico, with Father Diego de Santander appointed as its guardian. Construction commenced on the new church and friary of San Buenaventura in 1660, located west of the Pueblo and oriented eastward, similar to San Isidro. The church and its adjoining plaza, situated opposite the main residential block, created a distinct Catholic space counterbalancing the original plaza and its large kiva on the Pueblo's other side. The absence of a kiva within the friary, unlike those found at Abo and Kauai, along with evidence of rooms in the Pueblo being modified as concealed kivas, indicates increased doctrinal rigidity and a shift away from previous tolerance towards traditional religious practices by the Pueblo. Contributing to this change was rising discord between Spanish civil and religious authorities. San Buenaventura's single-nave church featured transepts terminating in a deep trapezoidal apse. Internally, the choir loft linked to the baptistry on the right, while the south transept provided access to a spacious square sacristy almost equal in width to the nave. Due to the steep incline of the hillside, a substantial platform was constructed, with retaining walls measuring 8 feet high to the north and west, and 6 feet high to the south. Difficulties in leveling the site contributed to the irregular footprint of the church. Intermittent work continued amid severe drought and famine that resulted in the loss of 450 Pueblo members in 1667. It is generally accepted that the church remained incomplete. Its limestone walls, 5 to 6 feet thick, ascend unevenly to heights of 15 to 20 feet, leaving the nave exposed. The Franciscans' ambitions ultimately faltered due to political conflict, cultural tension, and environmental adversity. San Isidro remained the mission church until its destruction during an Apache raid in September 1670, which also obliterated the original friary. Subsequently, Gran Quivira was abandoned and never resettled. Natural deterioration of the site was accelerated by scavenging and treasure hunters, particularly following the erroneous identification of the Pueblo as Gran Quivira around 1835, one of the legendary cities of gold sought by Coronado. Although no treasure was discovered, the name Gran Quivira persisted. Today, the blue-gray limestone of Gran Quivira stands in stark contrast to red sandstone construction of the northern Manzano Pueblo mission sites, yet all met with the same fate in the late 1600s. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and become a channel member, which directly covers travel and production costs. I'll see you next time.